Hello, this is my final order presentation. All right, so the differences between these two suborders. Um, so first, the Mysticeti, so the right and bowhead whales, they have baleen instead of teeth, so over 350 long baleen plates made of a flexible keratin that hang from the upper jaw. They're used to filter large amounts of tiny living things from the water at a time. So when the whale gulps up huge amounts of seawater, the hair-like baleen filters the food from the water, and it actually frays at the end and becomes this dense mat. And this mat allows an enormous amount of water and gulf to flow out of the mouth and retains the captured prey. The rostrum is also arched to accommodate this baleen. So they also have paired blowholes that are anterior to the eye, unlike the odontocetes that have a single blowhole posterior to the eye. So it evolved external protection from incursions of water to development of valve-like structure that seals the blowholes. So the water is excluded from them, and due to their high position on the head, and in addition, they have a medial sulcus between both blowholes and a rostral ridge that also helps to shed the water. This is a picture between the baleen and the toothed whales. All right, so odontocetes. So sperm whales, dolphins, porpoises are the largest suborder. They have teeth that they feed on fish, cephalopods, pinnipeds, crustaceans, etc. So they either suck them in or grab and bite them. So the facial profile is concave. This is used for echolocation to locate objects using narrowband whistles and broadband clicks used to communicate, which is generated in the nasal passage and then pushed forward through the melon, concave facial structure. So echolocation allows the toothed whales to dive deeper and search for food. Where light no longer reaches, this ability opens up new food sources. So do not rely on their sense of light, sense of sight, but rather on their sense of their sonar to hunt prey. All right, so I chose the humpback whale. They are very large, 40 tons. They have a very distinguishable look to them. Their variable amount of white below, the ventral grooves along the throat and chest, and their long fins, about a third as long as their body. So the unique ability of humpbacks are the ability to sing their songs. So the purpose of these songs are actually not known, but there could be a variety of different reasons for it. So it could be a mating call, contains information about the breeding intentions of a caller, a way of defending the area, so a territorial, or it could be a combination of all these things. So just also just coordinating cooperation between males. Um, so light does not travel far underwater, whereas sound travels faster underwater than through the air. So vision underwater is less effective than hearing is a means of communication. So humpbacks depend on sound for sensory perception and communication. The humpback whale song, so it's a complex acoustic display that can travel thousands of miles with its reach depending on the frequency, but it's created by individual males. So each male will add their own little tune to the repeating patterns. So all these songs will change over generations. Females do actually have songs too, just at a lower frequency and usually communicating between their calf. So the conservation efforts, December 1970, the humpback whale was listed as endangered under the Endangered Species Conservation Act of 69. All humpback whale populations were listed as one global entity and species under the act. So it's protected through a range of the Marine Mammal Protection, and NOAA Fisheries has made significant progress toward the protection of humpback whales worldwide by reducing injury and mortality caused by fishing gear, reducing the threat of vessel collisions, minimizing the effects of vessel disturbances and noise, and protecting habitats. So there's a lot of conservation efforts, pretty much protected areas, minimizing whale watching harassments, meaning don't get too close to the whale or just stay away from any oncoming whales. Reducing and responding to entanglement, which is a leading cause of injury and death for many whale species. Reducing vessel strikes. So the most effective way to reduce collision risk is to give whales a wide berth or avoid areas altogether that have a high concentration. Overseeing marine mammal health and stranding response. And then addressing marine health, unusual mortality events, and ocean noises, which we know interrupt normal behavior. All right, so from the guest lecture, I found most interesting from this lecture was the capabilities and accomplishments and complexity one country holds in terms of the world's wildlife. India, a wonder of the world that is known for being the most biologically diverse country, um, It's pretty amazing that they hold this amount of wildlife just in one country. So, India has over 1.3 billion people. 64% of its land is designated to agricultural, but even with those numbers, kids are still going hungry, malnourished, women are anemic, and have multiple nutritional issues. So, pretty much there's simply not enough food to feed everyone. With that being said, it makes sense in why animal-human conflicts exist. Communities need land to farm and grow their own food, and it's hard to have land protection for animals that make space for them when humans, their families, communities are going hungry. So even then, when there's less than 5% of protected area, India has still managed to make space for them. So 70% of world population of Asiatic elephants, 90% white rhinos, highest tiger density in the world, and 23% of the world's carnivores are in India. So there's lots of animal-human conflict deaths from snakes, tigers, over 80 different species, and it's extremely high. And there's little compensation for when it actually occurs. So it makes sense and why people are trying to keep these animals away to avoid conflict at all. It's sad to see how they keep them away, but it makes sense. So I chose the golden tamarin. They're very small monkeys. They have no sexual dimorphism. Their bodies are covered in this long, silky hair that can be from a pale golden to a nice, dark reddish gold. And they have claws and not flattened fingernails. So they are omnivorous. They feed on fruits, insects, and small invertebrates. So any small animal is a possible food source for them. They use their long fingers and hands to probe into tiny crevices in trees and bark for their prey. And they usually share food with their family groups, but rarely share food outside of their family groups. So their social structure. So they are a very social species. In the wild, they live in groups of 2 to 8 family members, and they comprise of a breeding pair, offspring about 1 to 2, and maybe some other relatives. A very unique characteristic of the tamarins is a formation of a permanent pair bonds and the equal dominance of both the male and female in the family situation. Also, scent marking behavior is also an as an effective means of sexual and social communication. So, geographic range. They live in lowland, humid coastal rainforest region of southeast Brazil. They live in vines, bromeliads, other epiphytes, and they occupy the closed canopy, often up to 29 to 100 feet off the ground. So current research in the 80s, it focused on the demography and socioecology along with the community environmental education and reintroduction program of captive-born animals. So studies provided information on social behavior, nutrition, and health that was critical to developing these reintroduction strategies. So the programs have been successful regarding survival and reproduction post-release, and have resulted in an increase in population. So efforts to preserve this animal looks very bright in the future. So very little is known concerning the social and sexual behaviors in natural habitat, but more must be learned about its behavior, patterns, and reproductive physiology, and that can be studied within the captive situations. So it is actually one of the most severely endangered of all primates in the world. There's about 400 left in the wild. Deforestation, habitat loss has accounted for the population decline. So the trees are either cut down for lumber, agricultural, make way for sugarcane and coffee production, cattle grazing, logging, charcoal, and urbanization. So the vast treeless areas prevent their spread. Thankfully, there has been efforts. So there's hope because there have been bred successfully in captivity and reintroduction in the wild has been very successful. So the Smithsonian National Zoo, which I actually live very close by, has played an important role in creating the Golden Lion Tamarin Conservation Program, which is still active today. In field research, reintroduction, environmental education, and habitat restoration. So they were actually upgraded from a critically endangered to endangered in 2030 due to these conservation efforts, and actually about 1/3 of the wild population today originated from those who were raised in human care, which is very cool. All right, so sound pollution in our oceans. Human underwater activities actually only started about 100 years ago by i.e. using air guns used to map oil. And because noise pollution is invisible, it has been overlooked and ignored. It has been overlooked for so long until now, whales have been starting to beach themselves and stranding themselves. So studies show that the sonar responsible from these vessels and everything is responsible for these beachings due to interrupted echolocation when traveling, hunting, and communicating. So the effect of sound pollution on marine mammals is getting worse and is on the rise. So commercial ships are increasing in number as well in size due to economic growth, and noise is now a global effect and not a species specific anymore. This is just a map of all the species that are affected by noise pollution. All right, so for baleen whales, so increase their vocalization rate, and at times of increased engine noise, gray whales' vocals were higher. Humpbacks increase the amplitude of the vocalizations while vocalizing less frequently. Also, communication range has decreased as a result of increased levels of ship noise, has been seen in the bride's fin, humpback, and minke whales. So, beluga whales lost pod integrity, commenced rapid movement, asynchronous and shallow dives, and changed their vocalization types. Narwhals actually have changed a lot, including their locomotions. They exhibited more direct and slower movement. They've actually become motionless and they sink, and they fall silent. Beluga whales respond to boats and ships have been studied more extensively, has shown increasing avoidance, so increased dive duration and swim speed, and harbor porpoises moved away from vessels, changed behavior states, reduced foraging behavior, and experienced decreased communication ranges. So porpoises may actually be more vulnerable to this type of disturbance due to their small size and low fat reserves. Anything that disrupts their foraging opportunities, i.e., a decrease in calorie intake, may have negative fitness results. So dugongs and manatees. So knowledge about the potential effects of watercraft noise on these animals grew due to the question of why these animals do not avoid approaching boats and whether they perhaps just cannot hear them. So fatal collision with watercrafts is a serious problem resulting from blunt force trauma rather than actually the propeller cuts. Manatees move very slowly. They're not a fast-moving species, which make them more vulnerable to vessel strikes. So dugongs were also affected by close boat approaches and less likely to continue feeding when vessels traveled close. Manatees forage in habitat with lower ambient noise and swim to deeper waters in the presence of boat noise. So this is a graph on manatee autogram, the human diver and ambient noise of manatees. So pinnipeds. Pinnipeds go out on land or ice to breed, pup, molt, and rest. So common reactions to approaching vessels increased vigilance. Underwater noise from watercraft can mask or change the communication of pinnipeds. The gray seal vocalizations reported a decrease in the loudness vocalization after the presence of a vessel. So summarizing the take-home message. So knowledge on how these costs affect other important functions, i.e. growth and reproduction, is currently absent. It's unknown. The question remains how these consequences affect the structure, function, and stability of the ecosystem. So the Lombard effect is an involuntary tendency to speak louder when there is background noise. So for example, gray, humpback, and right whales lower their vocalization under increased levels of background noise from large vessels. Lloyd's mirror effect also impacts marine life, particularly whales, by causing interference in communication and navigation. It's harder to detect approaching vessels due to disruption of sound signals near the water surface, which often results in collisions with ships. So, like the dugong, they spend lots of time close to the surface, receive noise levels from watercraft are low due to the Lloyd's mirror effect and less sound radiation toward the bow. So, overall research on the impacts of noise pollution on marine mammals has been sparse. In terms of its coverage of species, the vast majorities of species have received no attention at all. Geographic areas, another group of species that they've been underrepresented are those who utilize Antarctic waters, like the migrating baleen whales who critically depend on the Antarctic Ocean in the summer for feeding. Vessel type, so it can go from small inflatable whale watching boats to large icebreakers. Type of impact, so the type of noise impacts that have been studied are very spotty. Risk assessments based on the affected animals will leave the area, which is not true, as we've known that they will have a wide range of behavioral responses as well. So overall, there are a number of knowledge gaps resulting in several obvious research needs. All of this emphasizes the need for long-term, broad-scale studies focusing on a wide range of response types to analyze not just the individual, but population consequences. My citations. Thank you so much. Hope you appreciate it, or hope you enjoyed it.